Hello and welcome to Royale Without Cheese, our bi-weekly podcast in which we discuss both the classic and the unknown of Hollywood and foreign cinema from the then and now. We are your hosts, me, Miguel Aido, Leonardo Miranda.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. And Tomás Ferreira.
Hello. I'm fine too. Don't bother asking.
I didn't
I'm
ask.
good in my corner.
I didn't ask.
Moving
I
on,
thought you did
three
ask.
filmmakers in an informal dialogue with a film review each episode. As part of our raunchy playdate, reviews in both English and Portuguese will be available for different listeners.
Oh my.
Today's episode will be in English, and we'll be having a go at Mohammad Aslani's Chess of the Wind. Portuguese speakers can head to the Portuguese labeled content section. Now sit back and enjoy the playdate.
I sure will. Enjoy this playdate.
Very chessy film.
Yeah, the chessy film, just restored by the Film Foundation.
Yeah, shout out to Marty
I
boy.
think it had a lot of problems after its release in Iran. Funnily enough, the filmmaker Mohammed is a poet, just like the other one we know, Abbas Kiarostami. It just feels like they all are poets.
Yeah,
And they happen
that's
to
just a
stumble into
requirement
filmmaking. It's a
in
requirement
Iran.
in Iran.
You have to be a poet.
Yeah, you have to be a poet. It's like in your CV
Yeah.
to be a director. Yes, lyricism. Okay, so you can have a go at it. I do love the way the film opens with the vases being broken by the woman in the wheelchair. The woman in the wheelchair. It has an echo later on in the film when they put the body inside that big vase in
The
the
jar,
cellar
yeah.
and the jar. And whatever is that instrument that she's carrying, I don't know what that is.
The hammer. It's like a
Yeah,
hammer,
kinda
but it's like
a hammer, let's call
a
it.
strange one.
Because I'm thinking this lethal thing is used in domestic, kind of day-to-day life, probably. I don't know to what
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah, I don't know what it
but,
is. I don't know if
maybe
Breaking jars.
butchering
Yeah.
chicken.
Obviously.
I don't know if it's like a cultural difference or if it's just a random
Right.
object that the director put in there.
To give this out to children so they can play.
Yeah, they just threw it
They
around.
just,
This is the number one toy in Iran.
yeah. It's Hasbro sells this.
Yeah, of course.
The Doinko.
From their
The
branch.
Doink Kit.
The Doink. Anyway, what I find very interesting about the film is kind of the way that the mise en scène is mostly dominated by these wide shots. It kind of sort of has this tableau viewing of this very hierarchical sense of family and social life in the film, where the objects clearly show, and the care with the objects, and how they connect with people and their state within the house, the leader of the family, the wife, the sons, how the care with them and the time putting them together shows this hierarchy between the people and a sense of power. But then in the moments of greater dramatic tension of the film, you kind of shift from this fixed tableau viewing of the story, these wide shots that are fixed held shots, to these long traveling shots. Specifically for example, the first time this happens is when the wife, which I think was a brilliant idea that gives some dynamic to the film, otherwise very still, which is the wife in this wheelchair. I think the idea of the wheelchair being a wooden wheelchair to her is very interesting, because just the fact that even if it's just a quirk of fate that she is in a wheelchair, I think it works wonders, because it's fate making her be in a different position from everybody else, because everybody else sits on the ground. It's kind of a thing much like the Japanese. When they go to eat, they sit on the ground, they are together, in the Middle East, and she's in a wheelchair, and already that's kind of a defiance for the leader of the family, who is Hajid, and he clearly says, you could leave those that dressing code how you are, because she's kind of doing her mourning for her late mother, and she's very much not hiding her skin, not with the traditional dress code in the Middle East. And so the wheelchair, the way she's dressed, very much comments on that and how she's different and how she's putting herself away from the family and from Hajit's power, the leader of the family.
She's the godmother.
Yeah, the godmother in a way, who is clearly stealing her power. And I think it's interesting how, then out of the blue, you have this traveling shot accompanying her from her bedroom to Hajit's place, his kind of room. He's kind of doing his prayer, and then smack, she hits her. And then the camera continues on. The music gets to this kind of melodramatic high. It's like, it's almost scary. It kind of turns into a horror feel, where there is this very interesting thing. I think what is key to the moment is that there's this dissonance between the rhythm of the performances, I mean, and the rhythm of the camera. The camera movement is very slow, but a slow movement that is very meticulous, very calculative, against actions that are very brute and quick. I mean, the chair, who is, kind of pushing the chair, has these moments where clack, stops, and then continues on moving, and then so she can hit the husband, who is kind of doing his prayer. She sets the person who is, the maid who is pulling the chair, and just sets the chair a little bit down and clack again, and then she hits him. It's just these, the performances are kind of happen at a fast pace and have a way to punctuate that just goes against how the camera moves. And then somehow in the midst of it, when they're trying to hide the body, which is this awkward thing, hiding the piece of the crime, the camera goes 360 around the room, leaves the people carrying the body away, goes back to the lady who killed him, and then goes back to the maid and the son coming back from hiding the body, who come into the room. So it has this, all of a sudden it has this whole different language, which is really interesting. What did you thought about that?
Yeah, I thought the film is very interesting formally. Like, yeah, you have these wide shots. A lot of the time the action plays out, and then a lot of times he cuts to like an action, but much closer with the camera, or to a moment. So he breaks away from it. Like, for example, during this dinner scene, it's a wide shot mostly, but then when she drops the cat, it cuts to the cat and the guy hitting the cat, or she drops the plate and it cuts to the plate falling. So there's these abrupt gestures early on that then are mimicked by the hitting of the head, like with a hammer. But in that instance, he doesn't cut to the close shot. It's like it's a murder that you barely notice that it happened. Like, initially, I was like, what did she do?" Then I noticed, okay, and I remember them referencing that, to kill someone, you gotta hit the temple. They say it early on. So the film does have like that more typical, not typical, but like there's a setup and a payoff to everything. Kind of, there's a thriller, murder mystery plot, kind of, but it's done in a very undermined way. It's not until the last 20 minutes where it goes like in sort of a horror film direction. A lot of people reference Giallo, and yeah, it's very strange, very mysterious work by the end.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's visually it's astounding, and but before, just a note that, yeah, direction wise, I mean, I think it's really laudable. That, I mean, it's so, and it doesn't matter if the film is a bit slower, a bit faster in terms of the dramatic events that are happening. The direction is nonetheless always extremely self-aware. It always stays within the rules that Aslani established, and I mean, that's really hard to do. I think not to be tempted to do something more rushed, or however you may imagine to do. But I mean, to do exactly the way he does, in such a constrained but in a good way, manner. I think it's really impressive. I mean, but visually, I think it's the thing that most impressed me, because the thing that I said, the film looks like very chessy. I mean, literally, the film has this so much wood everywhere, and the way he shoots this house, and in terms of the subtlety of the camera, it's almost like you're moving in a chessboard, and even the shots that he uses so in so many statues, they resemble the pieces of the chess game. So it's it's a weird thing where a film kind of resembles a board game, and and it's, I don't know, I guess it's so serene. Even when the film is extremely agitated, it's always very serene, um, directing wise. Very very interesting.
For example, the scene when there's a reveal of the body. I find it very interesting the idea that it seems so meticulous that we're going to put him on acid. It's going to to drown him in acid, which is different. While he's on the vase on the thing, and then he disappears, which seems completely impossible. Wait, didn't like he should have been evaporated by the acid or something. But then he's in the cellar somewhere, and the maid helped him, hiding away. And then when it happens, when there's a reveal, the room, it has a completely different, color tone. It's red, and while agitating is serene. The maid is within this kind of bathtub, swimming along very slowly, and the guy Hajid is there, alive and well, just laughing away. And the woman comes in, and it's like there's this dissonance between slow down action, and something of it is kind of very intense and fast, which I think creates an interesting visual tension. Yeah.
What do you think about these returning to these shots outside, these traveling
No, the Greek
in the
chorus.
fountain? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was also wondering what did you think, because it's a weird thing.
Very
It's a
strange,
weird
but I think
thing.
they punctuate the film really well. Like the tone of the film kind of shifts with the way with what they say and it with the way he shoots it. Because although it's mostly just a wide shot, right, frontal, there's subtle differences. Sometimes it's completely static. Other times there's like a very like a push in very slowly, and then right before we do the transition to the horror last 20 minutes, the giallo kind of thing, the shot, it's like a lot of wind. Their gestures are a lot more abrupt, so it already anticipates the mood change of the film. So I think he really uses that well to dictate the tone of the film. There's always these subtle changes.
At first, I was a little bit taken aback because of it, but I think as time went on, I started looking at it as the continuation of this idea of the tableau vivant thing, that we are watching these women um, taking care of the clothes and washing the clothes in what it seems to be the backside of the house. I think the garden. I think it's the garden. I don't know, and it's like this great kind of group of maids. That's what I felt, because they at least seem to be. I see the building; it's the house behind them, and they're talking about Hajid and his family and the evils that go on inside the house and the wrongdoings and how the family, how the members are to each other. So it's reminded me of that idea of the Greek. I don't know if that's how you say it, but the Greek chorus that you would have in Greek theater plays, where there would always be this group of people in the background commenting kind of the action, serving as a punctuation.
Yeah, I guess I share a bit of your opinion. I was taken aback a little bit in the beginning, but then I don't know. I guess I fell for it. Again, there's just so peaceful moments, and even though it's different characters speaking about different things, you always connected with the action. So it relaxes you, but at the same time, always leaves you wondering what they're talking about and what the connection with the main story is. So there's always an inkling of something there. And I think part of the interest of these scenes is that mystery of the duality of why am I seeing this? Trying to figure that out. I think for me.
Mhm. I think the film is certainly a challenge to Pedro Costa's own darkness in his films, in his later films, because it's certainly a dark film
Very interesting.
and very
The
yellow in
Yeah,
its
very
own way.
yellow. Yeah, a lot of contrast. The night scenes are
Very
like
scary.
very scary. Yeah, it's very strange the way he lights it. I think the reference was Vermeer, I think.
Oh yeah?
Huh.
Oh,
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
And another one that I'm not too familiar, I don't remember the name. Yeah, I think he references that that director, that painter. But yeah, you also, not now, but during Marvel Color, you were talking about the hands and the gestures, and I've been watching Bresson, so a lot of it resonated. I reminded me a lot of that. The hands gain a mind of their own,
Yeah,
picking up
pickpocket.
objects. Yeah, pickpocket.
I thought about that, yeah.
It's very interesting. And I just, it's these types of films where you see the dynamics and the way characters are trying to play each other, trying to trick each other. Very interesting. I love the way in the beginning we see one of the stepbrothers, the one who's like the guy with the beard.
Yeah,
He's
Ramazan.
like pushing the kids, like being very like, get out of here, boy, get out, moving him along. Then when we cut to inside the room and he's talking to the woman, he's suddenly like, oh, you should wear your dress a little different. I think I don't want to tell you how to be, or like he's really trying to, I don't know, seduce her, I suppose, trying to get a bit of the wealth that might be coming.
And you know very early on that the one of the themes of the film is like the greed and
Yeah,
how
the opening quote, I think, even references it from the
yeah.
Quran.
hmm Uh, for example, you have the way characters use their rings, like that character Ramazan, I think, one of the sons of Hajid. He he's is like putting on his rings when you first see him, and he's in front of a mirror. And right off after that, he picks up this orange, what do you say, blanket, um, and brings it up to her. So there's always something, there's a this sense of wealth connected to objects. There's also Hajid's pipe, so one of the objects that you go back to more than once in the beginning and later on in the film. Also, the way I think one of the most beautiful shots in the film is how Hajid is always portrayed alone, almost like there's something about the sense of fable to the film and the mysticism to the film, in the sense that it feels like this mystic story where you have all these characters and then you have the big, king under the mountain, which is Ajit. Uh, and he's like, whenever he stays alone, it's almost like the film goes back to the idea of him alone. He's at his most powerful because him alone, he's with his thing, his possessions, and everybody else is away from his possessions. For example, in the dinner scene with his sons, he gets mad at everyone, sends the woman away, his future murder, and he sends his sons away, and then he becomes like his solitude, the same solitude that you met him at the beginning of the film with those counselors or whatever that were forging the scriptures so you could have the house that was from his wife. That solitude has something to do with his power, with his wealth. And then right after that dinner, he washes his hands, but before he does, he takes away his rings. There's this dance with objects and wealth, and yeah, I think he always manages to make this cutaway to hands very rich and always adding something, not just going there for the sake of going there.
Yeah, in the beginning of the film, there's, I think it's the servants kissing the ring. There's always that the rings are very important. It's also, I think it's like a light blue, so it really pops out, and everyone has that. Yeah, they're very obsessed with the that gesture of the hand. I think it speaks to the, it's a gesture that is symbolic of their greed and
Culture,
their need,
or
also, yeah, the culture, but also more of their class, of their need
yeah,
to be
yeah,
seen as superior. It's very interesting. I think now, talking about the Greek chorus again, also it's a punctuation, because we go back to the lower class, to the workers, are all there just speaking amongst themselves, while in the castle almost. There's this whole chess game going on that they are external to but still dependent on, because presumably they work for them. I'm not entirely sure, but I think they do, because we even see the maid there in one of the shots talking to them. And yeah, another thing that on a rewatch, I didn't fully rewatch it, but that I saw with different eyes was the maid, that character, the one who pushes the wheelchair, because she does seem much more active than I initially thought she was. It's almost like she's pushing the woman to commit that murder. She's almost guiding her to do these things, and you know that becomes, the fact that she's pushing the wheelchair is sort of symbolic of that, even if it's just, so it has that duality of she's a servant, but at the same time she's trying to gain power. She's trying to escape that role of servitude, and so the pushing of the wheelchair, I think that gesture is very interesting as a dual meaning. But then by the end, when she's like, "I'm gonna be your wife," and he's, "No, you idiot, you're my servant." So there's that inescapability of her role
Yeah,
that is kind
I
of
think
tragic.
she's
Very
probably one of
tragic
the most powerful
ending.
characters in that sense. I mean, she at one point she has a possibly sexual relationship with
Oh yeah,
the woman in the
absolutely.
wheelchair,
Yeah,
and then after all he's messing around with Hajid, and then after all she's messing around with the son,
yeah, she's very strange.
Shaban. So
It's
she's
a
all
film
over the
that,
place.
even though it's not very sensual, when it comes to it, it can be very sensual, and like so much so you gonna get why it was
Yeah,
banned
it's
at the time.
also it sneaks up on you. Yeah,
Yeah,
you are watching it, it's like, okay, this is pretty tame, but the gestures and the whole feel, it's very erotic a lot of times, especially
yeah,
that scene
erotic. Yeah,
between the two women, where it's like it's not a sex scene, but the way they're touching each other, and then she's like rubbing on her, very strange.
in the framing of that scene, you then have the statue like it's a guard,
Yeah, it's like the
preventing
camera
you
pulls
from.
away,
Yeah.
which then makes it even more powerful, I think, than if you stayed.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, you're seeing it from afar. I mean, you're supposed to be seeing it less and hearing it less, yet you see everything and you hear it even more. So
And it's
it's,
a weird framing because they are center frame, and at center frame you have the statue. So you see them, you see very little of them. You have the statue, and you have these. The weird thing about the room is that you have the statue at the center, and behind the statue, this quick bust. You have these two doors to the room where they're at. Two doors parallel to each other. So then, through the doors, you kind of see them having this dance in and out of them. You cannot quite tell. So yeah, it's a very specific place to put the camera.
But I'm glad they found this film. This is, I wish the director Aslani had more films. Like, I think he only directed 2 fiction films, this one and another one in 2008, but I don't know if that one is very accessible as well.
yeah, I mean, and from what the text described, I mean, it was so much like a happen chance. It just found in
Found
some
in
junk
a,
store and
yeah, very just luck. Like, this is a film, you know, we probably would have never seen. There's so many films like that that you just are lost. You're never gonna see, and maybe they're masterpieces. I don't know if this one is a masterpiece or not yet, but I think it's incredible. It's very lucky that we get a chance to see
Oh
it.
yeah,
This is why film preservation is very important.
I'm kind of thinking now of like mythical films that got lost and we never got a chance to see them.
One that I know is there's a more now film that, according to people like that watched it back then, it's like an absolute masterpiece, and it's completely lost. No one knows. I think it's Seven Demons or something like that. And it's so painful because I know, like, we're now as incredible films. So if people are saying that one is a masterpiece, it's probably a masterpiece, but I don't think we'll ever see it. And I know right now there's there's someone looking for the original copy of The Magnificent Ambersons, the Orson
Yeah,
Welles
from
film,
Orson Welles.
because that
Yeah.
film was not completely, but was kind of
Butchered by
destroyed.
the
Yeah,
studio.
butchered by the studio. And so I watched that version, and it's still very good, I think. But I do wonder, what if they find Orson's version? I hope they do.
Finding Orson, the
Finding
documentary
Orson.
from Netflix.
And we're talking about cinema, which is pretty recent art. I mean, everything else that came before in terms of paintings and sculptures just kind of makes you reflect on everything that's lost.
There's that big statue. I don't know how you say it. It's the Colossus, the Romulus Colossus or something like that. And it was in ancient Greece, I think, and it was like at a this big naval port, I think, receiving ships, and it was this kind of big statue, the colossal statue. And I wonder.
There's also the city of Atlantis.
Oh,
of course.
Also the city of Atlantis. Yeah, where Jason Momoa is.
Let's not forget about that.
Let's not forget about that.
Totally
I never
agree.
heard. What was the film you just mentioned? Oh yeah, Murnau's. Yeah. For example, and then you have films in development hell who never quite catch the light of day anyway in terms of physicality, because you have, for example, Guillermo del Toro. You have At the Mountains of Madness, which is in the question of adaptations, it's an adaptation from a book from H.P. Lovecraft. He never did it. I think it was meant to start in 2007, 2008. He had some luck to kind of start it for real, but then he didn't. And then, of course, you have Don Quixote from Terry Gilliam. He did manage to do it eventually with Adam Driver. But, it was since the 90s. So that's a horrible place to be and to kind of put all your efforts in making a film and then it doesn't even come out.
And then you have the opposite, which is a film purposefully meant to be lost in time for 100 years, only to be seen 100 years from now, which is that John Malkovich film.
Oh yeah, that was
really?
what I was going to say. Like that's the only case I know. But that is like an advertising thing. It's a film about a whiskey or something, because the whiskey, needs to last 100 years, so the film needs to last 100 years.
Advertising or not, it's still. I mean.
Oh, it's still. It's still.
Imagine.
A feat.
Now in 2022, seeing a film that they made in 1922 that has been preserved, like it's like finding a Murnau film, brand new. It's doesn't mean it's good, but I mean, whatever.
Yeah. It just means that for an ad, it's like
no, it's not an ad. I mean,
no one is going to realize. I mean, yes, it's probably in the ad. 100 years old ad. Taste it. Taste the grape, and everybody's gonna be like, "Oh shit, amazing! My life changed." Like that 1 minute ad passing on television.
At the very least, it has John Malkovich, so I mean,
that's a treasure. That's a treasure.
That's
something.
You're gonna hear his silky voice 100 years from now.
No, but I mean, I hope YouTube and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course.
Survives 100 years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And we survive 100 years to see it.
Yeah.
Nuts.
I mean, now that you were mentioning YouTube, like that's also a danger of everything being non-physical, everything being digital. Like a lot of these films now are only released on streaming platforms and stuff like that. Like if these platforms disappear, there's a danger that these films just get lost, especially the films that no one really cares about, that maybe are still good, but are less prevalent in the public consciousness, and they just kind of get lost to the ether.
Do you mean Stop Existing has celluloid film?
I mean, as physical things, because like if everything is digital, if tomorrow there's no internet anymore and no one put these films into
imagine a meteorite. It's the servers of Google and
exactly,
and whatever. The internet breaks down. I mean, it's kind of dangerous. But at the same time, the rest of technology pretty much accepted that fact, and you don't really have VHS, DVD players. So even if you had, even if you wanted, I mean, you probably wouldn't have alternative tech to be able to see them. So it's kind of sad.
And also you do have these institutions like the Film Foundation and
And
even
Criterion and all these things that, like
o
Criterion is a
Image.
physical thing they
Yes,
release.
yes, of course.
But yeah,
Criterion is the Holy Mary, you know.
there's more. Criterion just has more of a monopoly on it.
You have
But
the
there's
BFI as well. Yeah,
yeah,
you have the BFI.
Janus Films
I
also
don't
has.
have a Criterion DVD, but that would be interesting to
Yeah,
own.
me neither.
Just one.
I mean, I think
there are people
there's
who
a region
collect.
specificities.
Yeah, there's also that
yeah.
because you have the Criterion channel and you cannot really.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
don't have it in
I
Portugal.
mean, if you have a VPN, you can use it, but
Mm.
I don't have a VPN.
I don't do either. Yeah. Well, we're out of it. But we're still international motherfuckers.
There's also that Spielberg one, which Showa, no, isn't it Showa?
What?
Showa Foundation or something.
Ah, okay.
It's Steven Spielberg.
I thought you were talking about
Spielberg
the
made Showa. It's
Yeah.
like oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I see what you mean. Showa Foundation. I think we saw a film in one of our classes at film school that was related with.
But isn't it like a general thing that collects films?
I think it's more specific. I'm afraid. I'm not so sure. Like Holocaust.
It's
related?
probably
Not sure.
Holocaust. It's probably Holocaust specific, actually. But there's a Jerry Lewis film that's going to be released, I think, in 2 years, called The Clown Who Cried, because he said he only wanted it to be released after he died and a specific time after he died or whatever, because he didn't like it. He wasn't happy with the film because it's an attempt. It's essentially about a clown who goes to a concentration camp. I think we talked about this film in film school in relation to Godard.
So, is that film made by him?
It's made by him, directed by and he's the clown, obviously. And it's like, I think it's a Swede. It was made in Sweden or filmed in Sweden. I don't know. I'm not too sure. But yeah, but he wasn't happy with it. He felt like he was making light of the situation, that he was not being respectful to the Holocaust. Obviously, it's a very tough situation.
And just the premise.
And just the premise. I mean, although Roberto Benigni ended up doing the same shit and won an Oscar for it, so whatever. But yeah, but it is. I'm very interested because I think Jerry Lewis is a very unique artist. I would want to see what the fuck he's doing there.
I know, yeah, of course. I'm just saying the premise.
No, it's insane. Why would you do that?
Yeah,
especially in the 70s.
I've seen Life is Beautiful some time ago, but I think it's interesting that a father tries to entertain his kid to forget the horrors of it.
I don't know. Yeah,
it's not necessarily bad. It's kind of endearing because it's a very difficult thing to have that attitude with something that is that hard.
I don't know. It's just it's a balance. It's a touchy situation to do. I don't know.
It can be touchy.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember the film too well. Like Schindler's List is good, right? It's a very good film, but there's also there's a very valid critique, which is you're creating cinema and creating suspense and entertainment out of a very touchy subject. Like people always reference that scene where they go into the shower, and then there's the shot of the shower, and then there's a moment of suspense, and then it turns on. It's water. Okay, they're safe. They're not gonna get gassed to death. Like that's good cinema, and it's a very well built moment, but it's also kind of fucked up, in my opinion.
Oh, but that's precisely the way to convey that story to other people, that this happened, that this fear that they've experienced.
No, I think
if it is a construction.
I mean, it's fucked up not in the sense that it's conveying the horror. It's fucked up in the sense that it's building on your oh my god, the gas, and then it's not gas. That kind of, it's almost like a punchline. It's kind of, for me, it's a little strange. But Schindler, it's still a great film. It's just, I think it's healthy to be critical of these portraits.
Sure. I mean, in a way, what you're saying kind of reminds me of what to talk about comedy and the touchy things that comedy can go. But then again,
But I think going fully comedy is the good way to go. Like To Be or Not to Be, the Lubitsch film, made in 1942 during the Holocaust, and it's full on farce. It's insane, but it's also clearly a film of someone who's really angry about something, and indeed, in Lubitsch translates his anger through comedy, and it's incredible. And I don't feel like he undermines the situation, but also it has to do with the fact that in 1942, obviously, there wasn't an understanding of the full scope of the situation. Like the same thing with The Great Dictator, the Chaplin film 2 years earlier. Also, great film. Also, a much, in my opinion, much more interesting portrait of that time. Again, because it was during it, but there's also a naivety to it. Like the concentration camp in that film, it's like it's more of a regular prison, a labor camp, which we again now we know it wasn't just that. There was full on death camps, but still, I'd say the Lubitsch film is more poignant because there's a real anger being translated into comedy that is very hard to do, but I feel like it's more successful than maybe a Schindler's List, which is much more further removed from those times. And there's I don't know, there's an Hollywoodness to it that is inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, probably because, I mean, if you have Spielberg, and I think it's the 90s, I mean, yeah, it's inevitable, I think, with that specific aspect. I think, I mean, it wouldn't be in any other way. But yeah, I mean, I get what you mean. I think, yeah, ultimately, you have to have um, courage to tackle these issues, and I think Spielberg mostly did it right. Yeah, and that's it. I mean, you have to trust your gut and know that you mean well, and you have and you know what you want to tell, and you want to do it respectfully. And yeah, I mean, probably perhaps a couple of scenes might be more easily criticizable, just like other films that tackle these issues. But I think it's always a risk. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't watched Schindler's List in a long time, but I think like Spielberg is a fantastic storyteller, and he's gonna use the medium to tell a story. But I think the film probably lacked a bit more just portraying the cold, painful, like truly mundane evil of the Holocaust. And I know like Polanski is a terrible person, but I think The Pianist is a much better portrayed. Like it's just heartbreak. It's just really horrible. Like there's no fun in it. Absolutely no fun in it. It's just mundane evil. Everywhere you turn, someone is doing something horrible, and you just kind of walk through it. Like
But isn't
the
that
Adrian
like
Brody's.
discussing different ways to tackle the issues
See,
depending
yeah,
on who
yeah.
you are as director? I mean,
I mean, I agree with that. I'm just saying. I think Polanski's approach for me is better. It's just a difference. I don't know if it's a better film or it's more enjoyable. It's probably not, but I think it's a better handled. But it's still like at the end of the day, I think it's still entertainment, and there's still a building content, quote unquote, content out of tragedy, out of like a very horrible tragedy. And that can always be criticizable, but I don't think we shouldn't approach or we shouldn't tackle these issues. We should, but very carefully.
yeah, like anything that has heavy social, implications in terms of, you know, uh, disadvantages for people or trouble to people, in minorities. This is, from the Holocaust, which is a great horrible thing that happened to victims of abuse or trauma, whatever. This are groups that experience something very tragic, big in their lives, a phenomenon that people should look into it and research and try to see a way in which fiction can both have its way in terms of its liberties to explore, and at the same time while having those liberties respected.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree. I think now thinking of an example that I think is much like clearly bad from what I remember is like the boy with the striped pajamas
Oh
or
yeah.
whatever. Like that's just like that's just completely for me. I just find that
I
really
don't remember it
fucked
very
up.
well. I just remember the ending.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's very clearly a melodrama being built out of this situation. It's very immature. I
Yeah,
don't
it's from the
know.
point of view of the rich guy, of the rich people, the, the
Yeah,
little
as well.
kid
Yeah, true.
going there.
I don't
Oh
know.
my god, your life is so amazing.
And then the ending, they go like I was speaking. Yeah, that scene of the Spielberg film, but in this one, it's just completely distasteful. I feel where the kids are put into the shower and they think they're gonna take a shower, whatever, and the implication being that of
It's
death.
so horrible. It's
It's
so gut
so
wrenching. The ending. I mean,
yeah,
it's just
and I think it's very cheap. I think obviously, like I watch it and I feel bad. I feel sad. Obviously, it's fucking horrible,
of course.
but I feel manipulated. I feel like it's being
It's
yeah,
easy to
yeah. It's
it's
an
easy to feel
easy
that way because
yeah.
It's kind of it's almost like you're sad for the rich kid and you're not sad for the guy for the other kid who has gone for from far worse since earlier on than the other guy has, than as
Yeah.
Butterfield has passed. You know, probably since he was, I don't know, he's 9, maybe when he was 7 he was already getting beaten up, and as isn't, I don't know. That it's
but
just a
yeah,
difference.
it does make you make a point that these films have such a strong basis of tragedy already that you really only need almost kind of a sensible, gritty approach, a human approach to things, and that's enough. You don't really need to, as you said, manipulate it further because the things itself are already so heart wrenching, and in fact, doing so probably feels like you're doing the audience an injustice and a manipulation. So yeah, I get what you mean that these sort of Hollywood films, even if they come from directors such as Spielberg, can feel manipulative in that they just have stories, um, fiction stories about the Holocaust. Just that fact itself.
I will say, like, I'm not comparing Schindler's List to The Boy with the
No, no,
Striped.
no, of course.
Okay, because one is very clearly
No, I don't mean
superior
to.
and
Of
comes from a
course,
place of like
of course,
Of
yeah.
caring,
understanding.
of legit caring. It
Yeah,
comes at a
exactly.
point on in Spielberg's journey where he in the past he didn't identify with the Jewish culture and people. He wanted to strain away from it. He kind of got a little. There's a little bit of a trauma there in his childhood about being called, big nose and all those stereotype bad things, and then embracing the culture. This is a film where he legit embraced the culture, and it was hard on him. Funny enough, the idea of connecting, talking comedy and talking film, every now and then during the shoot, he would call Robin Williams to put a smile on his face. you know, so yeah,
I just meant that the films already have such a strong basis of momentum tragedy that anything that they do more can feel like a manipulation, or you can tend to that more easily.
but talking about just going back to Orson Welles, I never seen the Magnificent Ambersons. Such a poor guy in the sense that he always gets the studio meddling with him. This Magnificent Ambersons. He comes back, Touch of Evil, but he goes on making other films. It's just
He's an European filmmaker. He has to be in Europe. He's more he's an American. I mean, like, but he has that European sense of
he's an imported American
yeah,
filmmaker.
yeah,
Europe
yeah,
imported him.
more of that. Like he can't deal with the with the studio guys. He's too. He's. I saw an interview. I think it's in the Bogdanovich book where he's like just a bunch of interviews. Like he always had a pro. Like it's not with the studio heads, the big guys. With those, he was okay. He could talk to them because there's like a distance. But it's the middle guys, the ones who are doing what the studio heads are telling them to do, that he couldn't deal. That he had a lot of trouble with those, and so I guess it makes sense that he would take shelter in the more European type of filmmaking where the director is the auteur or whatever. He has more freedom, but
The Other Side of the Wind is very interesting. It's a very interesting one, I
very
think.
peculiar film.
Very
Another
peculiar
one, yeah,
film.
very late.
Very interesting. It has
Yeah.
a great mood. It's like being at a party until 3 a.m. Isn't that film?
It's like, yeah.
Is how it feels
It's
to me.
fucking-
And very close shots, black and white, and John Huston every now and then. Hi, what is happening over here?
And the editing is,
You
it's
know.
just all over the place. The way
all over the place.
jumps around
It
the
just
scene.
feels like you are in a crowded room and
Yeah.
people are talking and you're jumping in conversation, and it's just
But
amazing,
everyone
you know?
is like insane.
Insane. And
Absolutely
Dennis Hopper appears in the
Oh,
film.
yeah.
Was there in his cowboy hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, in his cowboy hat in the living
Like-
room, just appears there. Oh, hi there. It's just amazing.
All the 70s guys.
All the 70s guys are there.
Bogdanovich. Houston wasn't a 70s guy, but he's a 70s guy.
Yeah.
And
It's
yeah,
in the middle of
Hopper.
the film. He just John Huston jumped to direct another film, which was The Man Who Would Be King with Sean Connery and Michael Caine. Good film, by the way. And then he comes back to finish the film.
Yeah. Orson is great. So many
good film, man.
masterpieces.
F for Fake. F for Fake is a good
It's a
one.
good
That
one.
one, I gotta
It's
watch.
a good one.
It's a good one. He's a good boy.
Yeah.
Gonna be a bright star.
You know what?
Yeah,
I don't
he has
see.
a lot of chops.
I'm sorry, I don't see what's all the fuss with Citizen Kane.
Citizen. I mean, yeah, it's
Yeah.
What?
it's really good,
Yeah.
but I don't.
I'm
know.
gonna,
I
I'm gonna
think
break this
it's
one.
historically. I mean, if you think about the new things that introduced
It's not my favorite from him.
right now, seeing it, I mean, it seems pretty normal.
It has the weight of history on it, and it's
I
impossible.
think it
for
has
me
the
to-
weight of history on
Yeah.
it, and it's not like it's like the greatest film of all time.
No, but the thing is, at the time, not now.
The thing,
Sure,
is,
for
like
sure, I
the
can
the
see
thing
that.
is, like Vertigo, for example, also has that weight of history, but I don't feel a disconnect from it. You know, like Vertigo is
no.
also the one over the top.
I
It's usually
actually-
Vertigo or Citizen Kane.
I still feel a great wonder for Vertigo.
Yeah, same.
I say this like I have lived in 1959.
Yeah.
I still feel a great sense of wonder.
Just
since
like when I saw it when
1959.
it came out.
Yeah, it came out. The olden days.
Seeing Jimmy Stewart on the big screen.
Just do it on the big screen. Do you think I should go to Iran with my army boots? This is that line from
Is that
It's,
Rear Window?
From a Rear Window, yes.
yeah.
No, I'll just jump from Iraq and go to the photo shoot. This is not.
He's such an
Every
asshole.
time I try to nail him, I end up somewhere else. You know,
Yeah,
it just
it's
doesn't-
hard. It's very.
It's really hard.
It's a specific. It's like
It seems
instantly.
easy.
Yeah, it seems really easy, but then I can't do it. I'm not very good with
It's
impressions
like he has
anyway.
marbles. He has marbles inside his mouth, and who can't roll around. It's just- That's all for today. If you'd like to reach out and suggest a film for the next episode, you can find us on the podcast official Instagram and Facebook pages. Don't forget to subscribe, share this episode, or simply give us a like. That's how our podcast can grow ever more groovy. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.